Welcome to an audio Odyssey. The book of the same title was originally published a decade ago, and in the time since, much additional documentary evidence and information regarding KISS in 1981 has been uncovered. Since a second edition of that book seems unlikely, I thought it would be interesting and a fun challenge to create an Elder supercut, a multi-part audio documentary of sorts exploring varying facets of the Elder's genesis and era. The goal is to keep the assorted chapters concise and focused and purposeful in both standalone and serialized context. In this first chapter, an overview of 1981, which will provide the tangential pass for future episodes and deeper dives. As 1981 dawned, the members of KISS would probably have been exhausted. 1980 had been an emotional roller coaster, even though there would have been some sense of satisfaction with the completion of touring duties in early December.
Auckland! We love you! Rock and roll! Good night!
Peter Criss had departed the band, but Eric Carr had successfully been integrated into the lineup. The delayed tour of Europe had been navigated, and Australia visited in a hysteric whirlwind. But there also would have been a sense of trepidation. While there had been several exceptional outliers in some markets, sales of the studio album had trended downward from the positive gains made with Dynasty a year earlier. It was a simple matter of maths for the Australian affiliate when they broached the question of the potential delivery date for new KISS product in January 1981. The completed Unmasked album had been delivered to Phonogram on May 16, 1980, and the countdown clock for the next album had started ticking. Band member drama and whatnot be damned. The contract signed with Phonogram in April 1980 specified,
"During the term, if any LP of the minimum recording obligation shall not be delivered within 13 months following delivery of the prior LP of the minimum recording obligation, company shall have the right to compile and release in the territory a best of LP prior to delivery of the next LP of the minimum recording obligation."
In essence, that meant that if KISS didn't deliver a new album on time, then Phonogram would have the right to release a compilation. That might not necessarily fit with Aucoin's plans and promotion, and could indeed distract from other product. On April the 1st of that year, Phonogram had gone out on a financial limb to sign KISS, following the implosion of Casablanca. Since then, they'd had a year to start discovering the full horror and the true situation at their newly ingested label. To be fair, Australian Polygram wasn't the only affiliate clamoring for new product in early 1981, though they do seem to be the only one waving the 1980 contract in Aucoin's face at that juncture, just a month after the tour of their home market had concluded. Polystar in Japan inquired more politely, asking the same question on January the 27th, followed by Phonogram in the UK 2 days later. Aucoin's initial response indicated an anticipated completion date of a new KISS album by April or May, in line with the minimum recording obligation deadline.
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
What was the minimum recording obligation? That was simply the number of albums that were due to be delivered under the 1980 contract and anticipated schedule of releases. In early 1981, Ace Frehley's 1978 solo album engineer, Rob Freeman, was engaged for the session. To him, the session was simply a laid-back test session for the first studio recordings with a new drummer. It was also an opportunity to put Ace's very new and very expensive state-of-the-art studio through its paces. In a 2022 interview, he didn't recall any overt stress or the group cracking under any pressure to record an album or even get started, though their concerns would emerge during the long sessions. However, as we can clearly observe in hindsight, a multitude of complicating factors soon arose, but the Ace in the Hole sessions will be explored in greater detail in a future episode. Part of the purpose of the affiliate inquiries wasn't completely pushy, nor were they meant to be antagonistic. It was purely a matter of business. Phonogram affiliates hadn't been happy with the amount of time they'd had for the marketing campaign for the Unmasked album. The transition period surrounding Casablanca's full absorption by Phonogram was both messy and confused, despite best efforts. It seems that marketing and exposure were primary avenues explored as an explanation for the somewhat apathetic response to the album in certain markets, rather than issues around its musical content or the shifting audience demographics. In early February 1981, Phonogram requested that the group allow them 45 days lead time, particularly in major markets such as the United States and Australia, or face losing record sales due to a lack of promotional preparation. 2 weeks later, after Glickman and Marks had triggered the contractual clauses requesting the new album's advance payment, they expanded the request to 60 days to better allow the planning of the coordinated release on a worldwide basis. These were steps taken to ensure that all product was being released in markets simultaneously. That was a time frame favored by the Japanese affiliate, but didn't affect the requirements of the delivery date. Once Kiss had spent a couple of weeks at Ace in the Hole, it was clear they had a problem. There were an assortment of issues that afflicted the band. Creative challenges was one facet, and probably of primary concern regarding the sessions. It's easy for fans to hear the Penny Lane or even later pre-Elder Phase 1 studio demos and wonder what that problem was. It's less easy to see or feel the music that was being created from the group's perspective or understand the evolving dynamics of their internal situation. And by that, one might hazard a guess to issues emerging with Ace Frehley and Bill Aucoin, but as outsiders, the subjective theories all too easily cross over into fan fiction. Simply put, the band weren't feeling it from that batch of recordings. Australian threats or pressure from other Phonogram affiliates be damned, the music simply wasn't happening for how the group leaders needed to become invested in a possible direction for the new album. The material wasn't kickstarting the creative juices. As both Paul and Gene would later explain, the material didn't feel special, interesting, and was simply the same old music they'd been making for many years. They decided that they needed help. Enter Bob Ezrin, seen as the most viable candidate to deliver what the band had been promising during 1980, a return to the hard rock form expected by the fans. By the end of February, he had signed on to produce a project, contingent on his finishing up other projects that he had already pre-committed to or was already working on. Accordingly, by March the 2nd, the delivery date of an album had slipped to May, June, July, placing it on a knife edge for compliance with the MRO. On the other hand, Ezrin's participation was upsold to the label affiliates as a critical ingredient for a successful album, and they were reminded of his track record. At that time, it was a very strong track record with very few blemishes. Kiss reset and restarted writing before heading to Toronto for their first recording sessions with Bob at the end of May. The plan was simple, akin to Destroyer, a stunning album constructed despite the mixed bag of initial quality material from which to work. It was similar to the situation in 1975, illustrated through the Magna graphic demos. Clearly, if they were lacking inspiration, they hoped that Bob Ezrin could wave a wand and magically transform that material. By June the 12th, the delivery target fiasco had metamorphosed into the absurd, and Aucoin negotiated a further delay to October the 1st, stressing the emerging complexity of the project, with the group and Ezrin composing for a conceptual record. June the 12th was Elder Day.
Right, stop that! Silly!
Bill stressed the risk being taken, commenting to the band members and Bob,
The repercussions for not delivering by this date is the possible loss of our contractual deal with Polygram, and or at best, a renegotiation of our contract which obviously would not benefit us. I doubt Polygram would give us an extension without wanting to renegotiate some points in the contract.
Clearly, he was very much aware of the risk that they were taking and the contractual obligations that they had and the risks that the group was taking at alienating Phonogram. The risk they were taking was manifest, and they already knew the situation with Phonogram of potential sanctions from a contractual term violation. Those threats may have already been laid out in letters from Phonogram to Aucoin, though we don't have any evidence of them directly. However, for Australian Phonogram, the game had ended on June the 16th when new product wasn't delivered. The game-ending buzzer sounded, the MRO would be missed, and as far as they were concerned, Kiss had violated their contract. Polygram again threatened to release a best-of album. Of all affiliated markets, they had seen the most action in sales during 1980 and had based many of their 1981 sales targets on the availability of new Kiss product during the first half of 1981. It strictly was business, it was strictly economics. Bean counters may have believed that Hysteria was real and sustainable, or at least failed to have read national press reports or the international trades that truly illustrated what it was, a fleeting flash in the pan, though nonetheless a very exciting one. They contacted the band's management to start moving forward with a best-of release, resulting in Glickman Marks being forced to negotiate a side deal to prevent a competing album that could sap sales from the studio album once it was released. But at the end of July 1981, Polygram Australia relented and agreed not to release a best-of before the end of the year, if a new album was delivered by September. They made sure to retain their contractual rights, suggesting that they might release one at any time after that during the remaining term of the contract. The proposed track listing was nothing spectacular, and per the 1980 contract, would have been open to negotiation with the group. Both parties had to agree on the contents of any compilation issued as a result of the contractual lapse. Polygram Australia was also the most vocally unhappy affiliate in the reaction to The Elder when the masters were eventually delivered in October. They suffered the indignity of further delays due to receiving damaged masters, which resulted in Australia being the final major market affiliate to release the album. Polygram never released that threatened Australian best-of, though they did join with other international affiliates for the worldwide Kiss Killers Hybrid compilation in mid-1982. Eventually, they'd licensed material for the Concept Records, the Singles compilation release in 1985. This initial episode touches on a wide variety of subjects which need to be expanded on in greater detail. Additional installments will follow to expand this audio odyssey.